A very good evening. It is my absolute pleasure today to have this conversation around our theme of aging gracefully and having this conversation with someone like Arun Maira. And he is someone who I have interacted with extensively recently. It's perhaps one of the biggest achievements of my life.
So that's the reason we think it's a good to
May I request? Okay, sorry about that. Let me take a moment and introduce Arun, who does not really need any introduction, but briefly speaking, for those of you who may have quickly done a Google search and found incredible amounts of material on him, Arun was a part of the Tata Administrative Services for 25 years and held various positions in the Tata Group until 89 and was a board member of Tata Motors from 81 to 89, played an instrumental role in Tata Motors' entry into the LCV segment. He then worked at Arthur D. Little for 10 years, where he was the leader of global organization practice and the MD of Innovation Associates. Arun Maira served as a chairman of Boston Consulting Group in India from 2000 to April 2008. He was then appointed as a member of the Planning Commission of India in 2009. His focus here was the development of strategies related to industrialization and urbanization. With a very, very successful career, both in the private and the public spaces, it is actually the person, Arun, who I have been able to get a little peek into in the recent times that has been very, very enlightening and enriching. Good evening, Arun. Welcome.
Good evening, Bhavana, and thank you for that generous introduction. And you mentioned that many people must have Googled me. And people who Google me find that I'm an alumnus of XLRI, which where you went, and that's wrong. And I've been trying for the last few years to get someone to correct it on Wikipedia. And I'm told that I can't do it and someone else can do it for me. But it remains there, it's still there till yesterday when again someone mentioned that. And I said, no, I didn't say Bhavana Issar, my good friend, is from XLRI, because that person would know you. But I know you, I come from there. And yes, I am associated with XLRI. I've been on the board of XLRI for many years, not now. And so thanks for your accurate introduction of myself. Actually, I'm very curious. The conversation, I enjoy my conversations with you. They've always been sort of private. It's a one friend and another friend, and we share our carings and our concerns about the dear and loved ones that we have, as well as, of course, the purpose of the conversation quite often is generally is about your initiative, your Caregiver Saathi. And I love that. I love that. But today you got so many people who giving time to be on this conversation. And I'm just wondering why they would want to listen to an old man having a conversation with Bhavana Issar or Caregiver Saathi. So what I normally would like to do, and I can notice Sunil Savara up there, and Sunil and I know each other very well for a while, is always begin by asking other people, why are you wanting to be part of this conversation? And what immediate question is, what do you really care about? So we can talk about what you care about rather than, focusing on me. So I don't know how you're going to bring the others into a conversation with us, Bhavna.
Yes, I would be delighted to hear what Sunil has to say and take that into account. But at the time of registration, we did ask people about what is it that they would like to hear. And I will bring those in my conversation or questions with you. In the meanwhile, Sunil, would you like to
Oh, don't put him
share.
on the spot. I know him, and he and I have had very deep conversations about the condition of our country and the poor people of this country and the world. Okay, so that way, yes, I mean, your concern and mine also now is in this conversation about perhaps older persons. They're just one of those many who need to
Yes.
be acknowledged in society and given a voice and listened to. And Sunil and I have talked about that. But Sunil, if you feel like saying, please just I mean, don't go on with what a nice guy I am. I know you, so don't just say that.
Thanks, Bhavana and Arun. I'm really here to, I care deeply about, as you well know, about people having dignity in life. And I'm 68 right now. I just had a heart attack and I had to slow down considerably because of that. And this whole, aging gracefully, which Arun seems to have mastered, and whenever I meet him, he doesn't seem to look older. He doesn't seem to behave like he's an old man. I feel like an old man. So I'm therefore very curious to listen today to really learn this. I have absolutely no idea how to behave myself now that I have become older.
Sunil, you never knew how to behave yourself. That was the point.
That is also true.
So that's how you stay young. There's always something to learn, something serious, important to learn. So I'm glad that you still have that question about learning how to behave yourself, which is part of the solution to, aging gracefully.
Thank you for that.
Well said. Asha, would you like to state what is it that you're looking for?
Actually, we as human beings, we are very complex. Though we say that we are happy, hale and hearty, we have a lot of loads that we people are carrying in our life.
Right.
I think that stresses you out psychologically and emotionally many times.
Right.
We as human beings do not sometimes, allow a question to remain in the question form. We want immediate answers and we want scholars to answer it. I think that is where it becomes, a sort of an anxiety and a stress because it is their version of the answer. It is not your version. You want
Beautiful.
people to give you your version of answers, and your version of solutions to your problems without even discussing with anybody. I think that's where the gap comes in communication and understanding and perceiving things. I think I am of a very different opinion. For me, aging is just a part of life where the number of years in your life keeps adding, but aging happens from here. If you're hale and hearty here, I think I count myself that 13, 14-year-old girl who wants to do whatever she wants to do and she just goes and gets it. That's my thought of doing things. So
Well
I am
said.
not aging. It is the world that see me aging. I am not aging. I'm very clear on that. I'm happy that way. So that's why I thought maybe it will be very good experience for me to, be with seniors, be with people who have had so much of experience and maybe get a very different perspective to things in life. Maybe I can say, okay, I get some knowledge from here. That's why I'm here. It's my curiosity dog which has pulled me here.
Asha, how old are you in chronological age?
Yeah, so I'm 52 complete, 53 running, sir.
Okay, so we get it. And you say that I can see the way you are, and you say you like to be like you were when you were 12, 13 years old. You
Absolutely.
sound like a very precocious 12, 13-year-old bright girl. And the secret is to remain like that. And as you said,
Absolutely. That's
we
what is
start
the
growing up and we are taught on how one should behave and to be person who can give the right answers. A child doesn't realizes she doesn't know the
absolutely,
right
sir.
answers. But yes,
Genuinely,
she struggles with
that is a
feeling acknowledged that no, I'm good enough, I know the answer. And why do you doubt it? And so the best children as they grow up, we allow them to show confidence at the same time, put them in a space where they can learn without losing their dignity that I don't know yet.
absolutely, sir. That's right. That's genuinely right.
Bhavna, please,
Having
thank
said
you
that,
very much. Those two, I can see the flavor of the conversation already. I'm already in a conversation with both Asha and Sunil and with you, but it's your conversation.
no, this is fantastic. I think it's really the times that we grew up in, one kind of imagined that being in one's 70s would be aged or nearing and recently, of course, that goalpost seems to be shifting, and we find that so many different people have different body constitutions, they have different responses to the world, and how we progress through life through our experiences determines or not just what it means for us, but how people see us. So Arun, we would like for you to take stock of what has been your experience over the last few years around the idea of aging per se for yourself and what you see around you. And then we will get to what it means to aging gracefully.
I know, but so many thoughts are coming to my mind after we started from what Sunil said and what Asha said, and now what you are asking me about. So I don't even know where to begin, but maybe I should be a little personal here and say, talk about your question is, in the last few years, how have I begun to think about myself as a person who's getting older? And then at the same time, you see, at that stage, I wasn't even conscious that I was getting older. And I tell you that story. I retired from the Planning Commission where you stopped my introduction in 2014. And at that time, I guess I could do my mathematics here, born in 1943. And someone can say how old I was at that time. It was, I guess, past 70. I says now, finally, time to retire. People should retire at 60, 65, 70. And I had gone into retirement in my mind with my wife at 65 after BCG, where I voluntarily told those people that, I think you've grown up enough to look after yourselves. And I and my wife want to spend some time traveling and enjoying each other much more than we had been able to while I was busy. And the Prime Minister called me at that time, but I was just starting the holiday, both of us. And the first day we landed in Europe. And he'd just taken over as Prime Minister for the second term and needed to appoint a cabinet, which he did. And then the Planning Commission, which is the second body that he chairs, the Prime Minister. And he chose some people, it seems, and I got a call to say that Dr. Manmohan Singh would like to speak with you, and he wants to invite me to join the Planning Commission, which I know would be a completely absorbing job. I mean, there's no question of giving much time to my wife. And she was naturally quite nirash because here the time had come, our golden age and Golden Pond and those sort of movies of Henry Fonda and, out there on the pond. But it wasn't going to be like that. So when I retired from the Planning Commission after 5 years, when the government changed, one had to, resign along with the present government, the Prime Minister. I said, oh, finally, it's there. And so for a few months, I was just doing what I really enjoyed a lot, which is Sunil had introduced me much more actively to that already, is change makers in the country, is young people and older people. And there were mostly people that Sunil introduced me to who had already achieved something in life, in terms of money mostly. They felt that they had put themselves into a position that they could do the things they really wanted to do and not worry about having more money to look after themselves. So that's when Sunil said that he was organizing at the Gandhi, the ashram in Ahmedabad and Sabarmati, a whole gathering of such people. There were 300 of them, I guess, to come. And they were young and some were older and experienced people also, but with the same questions. Why is the world in the condition in which it is? Why are there so many people who don't have dignity, who are poor, not just in money terms, but poor in terms of, as I say, dignity, that they're thought of as very poor, uneducated, and we have to do something for them in terms of charity, which gives them less dignity, actually. So this was the question Sunil said that they want to discuss together and so on. So as I said, that meeting, again, the same way, one was starting by asking people, why do you want to be giving 3 days of your life and immersing yourself in this other rigorous program that Sunil has organized, where you're sleeping in the Gujarat Vidyapeeth and those dormitories, which are, very basic. And that's the accommodation provided to you. And well, and no fancy halls for the meeting, but we are going to be discussing together, learning together. And I realized then about myself that that's a question I hadn't really answered for myself. I was in the planning commission because I was required to be. I really loved it. I got to know poor people of this country in the planning through the planning commission because one was being approached by anybody and everybody. I mean, CEOs wanted to see one and asked me for time rather than the reverse as selling consulting work, CEOs of Ratan Tata and others, one would have to wait a long time. This was the reverse. When would you be free? Our chairman wants to come and see you for half an hour and so on. I said, oh, good. And of course, our NGOs, they do want someone when knocking at the doors of the government and saying, please, would someone listen? And I just thought I need to listen to different people. I've listened to and guided business entrepreneurs all my life, and they've done very well. On their own, they were doing well, and I learned from them, or some others I helped to sort of straighten their minds out and their organizations out. But these other people are really I can learn something from and learn something about something what matters to me. My country and its people matter to me, which is why I've taken up Manmohan Singh's call, Dr. Manmohan Singh's call, that, it's a chance to serve the country, he said, and to help the poor people of the country. That's the words he used. I mean, I said, gosh, at this time in life, I know nothing about it, but here, let me learn. Let me listen to these lovely civil society organizations and their leaders, and through them, the voices of the people of our country. There were, yes, women organizations, children's organizations, disabled persons organizations. There was apparently amongst them HelpAge India and older persons caring organization, but it was hardly noticed because they're very small. It's not such a popular cause. The cause of women and children is much more important. They are, productive people. They can contribute to the economy by, growing up as children more effectively. And women, maybe if they joined the workforce rather than staying at home, it'll add to the GDP and, all that sort of stuff. It's all the economic matters. And this, well, I was expected to know about that, though I'm not an economist, because helping businesses to be economically successful, maybe there's some ideas how to make the country economically successful. But the country being economically successful, would it help the poor people? It wasn't helping the poor people, which is why coming back to Sunil's meeting, it was Gandhi ji, and he said, Purna Swaraj for everybody, and particularly for those who do not have it yet. It's not just political freedom. It is social freedoms and economic freedoms also. And his struggle is unfinished journey of change. The change hasn't finished. His life, unfortunately, well, all lives have to end, and his was ended rather tragically. That journey was unfinished. And so here we were at the Sabarmati Ashram, picking lessons from Gandhiji's life. But not, again, just hagiography. Gandhiji said. His point in his whole life was, it's not just thinking about good things and being a good person, in which case one could retire into the Himalayas. And there's a lot of that about spirituality and, think and be a good person and be a conscious capitalist. And these words started annoying me. Yeah, it's all very well for me to be very good in myself and pure, but is it improving the world for others? I may feel very good about myself, but how is my life helping others? And this is Gandhiji's mission. Yeah, learning through his life, my experiments with truth. And there was a lesson there, you see. The lesson there was learning through life. Learning about what? And this comes to Asha's point. Learning about what the world needs to do differently and what therefore I need to learn to do differently and help the world to realize it must do things differently. That's the only way to have impact on a large system. Yeah, your personal charity, your personal goodness can improve the lives of a few people. And if you take the attitude of charity, in fact, as I'm saying, it genuinely does not improve people and their self-respect. Yes, you do give them the things they're missing. They need food, they need some money. And this has been the general pattern of development that, through government schemes, through big philanthropies, make sure food is reached to the poorest people, make sure free education is provided to the poorest children. It's all about giving something. and not changing the system such that people could, with their own dignity, with their own efforts, equal opportunity, get it if they wish to have it. So this is what has kept me going. But I didn't realize the cause of older people, especially, like I said, until a few months after retiring from the Planning Commission, when I got a thing from some big search organization in the UK that this organization called HelpAge International is looking for a chairperson. And I promptly said not interested because I promised my wife that I would not take any positions. Because when I take a position, I feel very responsible for, my organization of which I maybe supposedly a figurehead as a chairman, but it's my organization. I'm supposed to be accountable for the condition of this organization to the public. You can't just get the benefit of positions and titles without, giving back something for what society's given you, the dignity of your position and your title. You've got to do something. So I didn't want to do it. And she knew that. She said, the trouble with you is people say it's part-time or something, you'll never leave it part-time. So don't take it. So I didn't. I told those people, sorry, I'm not interested anymore. But then lo and behold, I get a call from someone who'd worked, Englishman, who was with Save the Children here in India when I was chair of Save the Children, converting Save the Children India into a more Indian organization. And then, I had to leave that when I joined the Planning Commission because you have to, disconnect yourself from all other organizations. So this person who was the English person down here, he'd gone back to England and he was now the CEO of HelpAge International. So he promptly called me on the phone and he said, Arun, please, we really need help. We need someone, who's passionate about whatever he does and, thinks differently and helps us and people to think differently. You got to help us. We are completely helpless because no one cares for older people. They're not productive. They're not going to be contributing to the economy. They're burdens in families also, especially when families say, look, we need to earn more and we don't have enough even for myself and my wife and my children. And these older people, they've had their lives, why should I have to be responsible for them? Why can't the government, provide them pensions and build some old person's homes? And maybe if I have the money, I'll send them to an old person's home, but get them out of my life and my feeling of responsibility for them. And this change was there. This change was there. So he said, Toby Potter, he said, Arun, completely different thinking is required by us, HelpAge International, about our mission. We are called a charity, we're registered as a charity, we're required to be. And we work internationally, passing on money to organizations around the world. It's still the same mode of charity. And charity for older people, there's no money compared to charity for children and women and more lately environmental causes and all that. So what do? So this was a challenge. Yeah. And so then come these two older persons who were trustees, two African, one woman, one man, older people, not that old, they were probably getting into their late 50s or 60s, early 60s, no, late 50s. And they were traveling through India to Nepal, where we, HelpAge International, I'm saying we now, then it was that organization, had got some money from the UK and elsewhere to, give money to take care of all the victims of that tragedy, the earthquake. And these people got money to help older people in distress in Nepal. And so these two old trustees, African trustees, are flying through. And Toby said, they're going to be tired of that after their trip from wherever they started, both of them somewhere in Africa. And on the way to Nepal, they're having to stop in Delhi for a day or two. Would you at least meet them in your house? I mean, you don't go anywhere. So I said, sure. So they came, these two people, and they're very tired. And my wife said, come sit down, you want tea, this thing. And I remember this man and the woman said, actually, this she was a very tall Ethiopian woman, black woman. And she said, my legs are so tired. And she told my wife, do you mind if I sit on the floor and stretch my legs? You got some beautiful couches and things. And my wife said, no, please do. Treat it like home and do that. And so then they talked to me about themselves. And they talked why they cared and the struggles they were having to help older people everywhere. I got hooked. And so after they went back, I got a call from one of the chair of the governance committee in charge of recruitment. And he said, the board is already met and these people have given the feedback. Please, you've got to help us. So I told my wife, and she says, the second time you're doing it to me. Yes. First, the Prime Minister calls you for the cause of the people of India and all these, and she liked them. But why can't you just be friends? Why do you have to get involved? So I did get involved. And that's where Bhavana, I began to understand the challenges, not just the older people, the challenges that organizations have who are trying to help the cause of older people. And that comes to you, therefore. That's why I'm very taken with you when you approached me in Sankalp in Bombay and said,
Yes.
hey, yeah, you're doing something. And I said, hey, this is a person. Why is she doing this unusual thing? And I don't even remember whether I was HelpAge International at the time. I may have been or may not have been. I don't know. Anyway, I got intrigued by you as a person and, why are you caring about this and why are you doing all this? And so, well, do you mind my sharing this with the others? So
Not at all.
Bhavna said again, can I come and see you at home? I said, sure. And it was sort of a time in the evening when, my wife and I we don't keep full-time help. We just started just a year ago because my wife doesn't keep that well. At 81, you need help. And so we didn't. And so my wife used to encourage me that, take these people, your friends, and the conversations in the nice club downstairs. Sunil has been there. He's been at home also, but down there in the club, Sunil. Huh? And, you can get good tea, coffee, or whatever you like. So look after them. And this woman, I'm now talking to the rest, this woman, Bhavna, and you know her a bit, and she's just so inspiring. But she brought along with her an older woman, her mother. And so she introduced her mother to me. And Bhavna had come to me to talk about a challenge of organizing a caregiver Saathi. And so she said to me, Bhavna, you said to me, your mother thinks that you once again off on one of your crazy ideas, and this has gone on a bit too long, I think she was sharing with you. So I said to your mother, if you remember, what do you think about it? Yeah. And Bhavna thought, that we a waste of my time for me to hear her mother's views of it. She said, no, mom, and Arun is very busy. I said, no, I want to hear what she thinks about it. And I met another really powerful woman. She's not a helpless person. She's had a very tough life with your father who passed away young and bringing up this rather, Asha-like girl here. It's a challenge. And it's gone on, I know, with your motorcycle, which you still drive, and your husband is, accepting that and so on. So, yes, I could see your mother's challenge, but she just treasured you. And Asha, this is the point. When you get a child who can stand up on their own and do bold things, and you feel concerned, of course, but to say, gosh, I really brought up a good human being. And I could see the mother's pride in this woman in front of me now. And so that's how, Bhavna, you and I got into this conversation. What is your challenge? Your challenge is my challenge also. My personal challenge, I'm 81. My wife's challenge, she's also similarly same age. And challenge of many people in the world. It's the largest growing demographic segment. It is thought of as an increasing burden for economies. And I say is the least utilized asset of society. It's growing under our eyes and around us. And we think of it as a burden and don't recognize the wisdom, the experience that is available to us, and we need it at this time. The way we are running the world and have run the world has caused the problems for which we're wanting to find new solutions. People who might remember different ways of doing things, family ways of doing things, community ways of doing things, are our oldest persons, especially
Yes.
in poor countries like ours, India. We had to
Yes.
rely on each other in communities. Older persons lived within their families. Yes, there were burdens. They had to be fed more or more effort being made to, take care of them, but they were respected. And
Yes.
when they, gave time and said, with tea time, come and sit here, grandchildren would love to hear their stories. Yes. And there were stories of wisdom and, old myths, and they'll tell stories and so on. And we need to remember our wisdom as humanity. and we've lost our wisdom as humanity and become damn smart, sorry for my language, at efficiency and execution.
Oh, well, yeah, well said. We do need, and thank you for the very kind words. Like I say very often, I feel it has been such a privilege to have literally accosted you at the Sankalp conference and then stayed in touch with you. It's been such a gift. I have learned so much and I continue to learn, and I look forward to our conversations. I think that as I hear you talk about staying engaged and curious. Certainly, you have been in positions of influence and power, but irrespective, whatever the definition of retirement may have been, you followed your heart and believed that you could contribute. And I do think that that is very inspiring and that is very important, that we don't go by definitions that are imposed on us, but we make our own definitions and find our own sense of purpose or redefine a sense of purpose in whichever area that we are progressing in. The definitions of retiring from one job do not mean that we cannot craft a meaningful contribution elsewhere. For sure, we know that there are a large number of civil society organizations and many other setups, maybe new setups that can be created that need a combination of life experience and new experience. I was listening to this podcast this morning, which spoke about the silver tsunami and said that it is impossible for the younger generation to create a startup for the older adults because they just don't have that life experience. It is very difficult unless they know what the real pain place is. Though, of course, I know that startups are not the answer to all problems. I'd like for you to help us understand how you see the shape of society change, and a little more about what you were referring to, conscious capitalism. Can you help us unpack that?
The shape of society, how is the shape of society changing? We talk about the shape of the demography changing, means in the numbers of people of different
Yes.
biological age brackets. That is not society. That is the
Yes.
demography changing. We talk about the shape of economies changing, developed economies and mid-income economies, all in money terms. So yes, we are very conscious about the change in the shapes of economies. This is the whole policy paradigm, and the development paradigm is about the change in the shape of an economy.
Right.
There should be more urban, less rural. Much
Yes.
less agriculture, much more industry, or nowadays much more artificial intelligence and the civil service. Much more artificial intelligence, much less wisdom. This
Yes.
is in the economy what we want more of. And technology, of course, enables us to get more of that, meaning leave people out of it, leave wisdom out of it, and do what we say calculative intelligence. This is what is changing in terms of the shape of the economy. And it is also the change in the demographics, like I said, and the clash of those two is creating the problem. Because if you think of everything in economic terms, then in the present setup, older persons cannot earn enough because they have to be as productive and compete with younger people, both in physical abilities as well as maybe the ideas that they have. They've learned very good ideas which they matured, and they've forgotten some deliberately because they realized they were not good ideas and they've got questions in their mind what's new. But they've given up at this stage to say, my time is over. I hope the young people learn all this and get the right ideas. And so we have the combination, I say, of changes in demography with the need to change the economy. There's a conflict here. We can't have the same pattern of the economy and expect to listen well and give dignity to the voices of older people because we think they are the past. We think they've got nothing useful. We have the useful solutions, the more modern useful solutions. And so we've got this conundrum. When you talk of society, like I said, society is not the economy. And unfortunately,
Yes.
the economics has grown as a profession, especially in the last 100 years, when it forgot its moorings in the theory of moral sentiments, is what Adam Smith wrote. And he wrote, of course, the competitive advantage of nations and, that all that stuff. He came into competition in economics and the pin factory example that Adam Smith wrote about in his big book. Pin factory. Well, what is this? I think is a good illustration. What is the pin factory? And he said that if you organize work where every person does just a little bit in the production of the pin in a factory, one person, picks up the long wire, the second person and passes it next person, cuts the wire, the third person polishes one end of the wire, the fourth person then bangs the head on the other side, and you have a pin. He said this way, everybody doing something and most efficiently, they learn to do the same thing better and better and better. And so the whole factory is much more productive. This is in his book. And this is the one example where I'm saying a story in his book, starting from his imagination of real life. But it's an artificial description. It's a description of a new form of organization, which is a factory. And to run this factory, you need to have people who are going to be coming those many hours and stay side by side, because if one person is absent, the assembly line will not work. So we've got now many people who are coming out of their family times and obligations to look after children at a certain time, or their goats if they're keeping them at a certain time. So they get off agriculture, get away from family, and they're in a factory. It's industrial, productive. And in that, they've got to be their etas and keep doing the same thing. What a life this is. That I'm working to produce value for someone else. And what is the purpose of my whole life? This form of organization, Bhavana, I'm saying, has really, really killed the world. And Aldous Huxley wrote about this in Brave New World. And he wrote Brave New World before George Orwell's 1984. And 1984, Orwell's thesis was that, authoritarian regimes are bad, they snoop on you and so on. Huxley
Right.
pointed out something much more fundamental. He said Fordism is killing the world. And Henry Ford's
Right.
idea of an assembly line, which America built his whole economy on, and then Henry Ford became an advisor to the Soviet government, and people forget this, and enable them to create factories as large, as productive as the Americans, and that clash then went on. He said, this is what is destroying humanity, taking people away from community and family roles into
Right.
organizational roles. And when you talk of careers, your career is in an organization. How am I going to climb the hierarchy of this organization? It's not. I will grow older in a family and have a new role because I'm older and I've given birth to children who in turn have given birth to children. I just have to play another role. I can't be
Yeah.
productive in the old ways, biological ways, and that's okay. Yes. And I get my promotion by being older.
Thank you for saying that. And I think it's really important for us to differentiate that the shape and nature of society has been changing, and economics or economy does not define society. I think that's the key point. And I think it is equally important for us to listen to others and listen to what is being told to us in the world that we live in, but also make our own meanings. So we have our own experience. In one of our conversations, a private conversation, you had once told me a very beautiful story about your grandparents and listening to their stories. And how have you seen the role of grandparents change and shift over time? I think that is deeply connected with the idea of aging in today's time. So I would like for you to comment on, the changing roles of grandparenting in today's society and how significant that is. And maybe in today's time, we are missing that.
Thanks. As I said, I joined HelpAge International and they had a challenge. How can older people have dignity? They can be given physical security if there's money to
Yes.
create an older person's home. Yeah, and this is where the solution has been in the Western world is, at a certain stage, let's have communities like the first one started in big ones. They're money-making communities in Arizona, nice sunny weather. And, they created this whole community, and the first one's very famous, where to buy into that community means you could start investing and getting a lovely apartment around a golf course, and it needs to be around a golf course because that's a sort of exercise which apparently older people can keep doing, and sunny weather, which is all very nice, and so on. But you had to be above a certain age when you
Mm.
occupied that place. And
Mm.
rules there were that when you occupied that place, no persons younger than a certain age would come and live with you. Because if children
Mm.
came particularly, they'd be noisy and they'd disturb the peace of older persons. So here was
Mm.
a strange community where you're separating the older people because
Mm.
you're fine, okay, you're all right, and you can live comfortably. It's costly, but what is their life? What is their life? And I want to share with you that idea of having separate communities just for older people. We've got it in India. I went to visit my friends in Antara, near
Yeah.
Dehradun, a couple of weeks ago, and they are my neighbors who also felt that they need to be in a place where there's no disturbance, and older people can have their peace in the evening, and it's very well. All the other facilities are given to them. If you can't cook yourself, and of course they've got lovely kitchens and help that is provided at a price, and it's all arranged. You don't have to worry about your health. It's
Mm.
professionally recruited through some agency, will come with uniforms, you just pay and you get all the service that you need. And
Mm.
so the medical older care homes, like in Canada and the US and the UK, it's not like that. You're not living in charge of your life. You're living somewhere where people take care of you. But here too, the idea is the isolation, and that you then provide facilities which are appropriate for people at that age. So I
Right.
went there and I met with people who retired from the government and from the corporate sector, and they're happy. Yes, they're happy because, as you said, but in the evening they can have a drink with each other, and then some play cards and some play bridge, and they watch a movie together and go to bed at a reasonable time, and so on. But I began to hear from them their stories. You know, what were they missing? Oh, my grandchildren are in America. My grandchildren are sometimes in India also, but I hardly see them. Hmm? And so I was sharing with them that I miss my grandchildren too, because they all happen to be in the United States. And so I was talking stories with them, and they love to tell stories. Grandparents love to. Can I tell you one more story about my grandchild? Can I tell you about how cute she is? And you politely want to say, but mine's cuter than yours, smarter than yours. And you get very happy times talking
Yes.
about the joy you get being with your grandchildren. Do grandchildren enjoy it as much? No. If you tell grandchildren that older people, they are a problem and go and take care of them, and so it's hard, or don't go near them, you'll disturb them. And we do bring it up like that, you see. And that's why connecting with that stories of the Arizona, those uh, older persons condominiums, no condominiums, the whole community with the golf course. And this model has gone up. Model has gone up. I'm saying we introduced it in India, and it came to India again when
Yes.
people, there's an opportunity. People are growing older in India, and many of them are rich people, and many of them,
Yes.
of course, maybe have children who are in the United States, and they're growing older here. The children who made a lot of money through IT and financial, and Indians grow up very well there. They will be happy to, say, I've taken care of my older people, so yes, I'll fund your buying a place in Antara and places like this, or you do it on your own. And then I feel, oh, they're out of my life and well cared for. And what are they missing, the older persons? Really, they don't feel that they are
Connection.
considered alive anymore. So we
Yeah.
need a model about older people remaining in communities, remaining with their families. And in my help-age work, we realized as we went to Africa, where they don't have the resources to create these very fancy places where you can isolate older people because the families themselves can't afford
Right.
much. And we've had this practice in India, widows thousands of years ago. They are
Yeah.
no longer useful in a family because they
Yeah.
can't produce anymore because they don't have a husband. Yeah. So
Yeah.
even young women as widows, Go to Mathura, have your head shaven, live with other
Yeah.
old people. Oh, yes, we've taken care of them, they're out of sight, and how noble we feel. We've provided for the widows. Yeah, we won't let them marry again, and we've saved them from jumping in the fire, but they're taken care of somehow, somewhere. What is that life? Do they feel respected? Yes.
What I'd like to be able to do is connect it with the idea of aging gracefully. What is the phrase aging gracefully mean for you in your experience, and how would you unpack that for yourself? Or, how do you look at your coming years, decades?
Bhavna, I learned something from my grandson. As you say, we can learn a lot from our grandchildren. And this is again when I just joined the planning commission, and the question was that we were struggling with is why are there still so many poor people in our country, even though
Right.
the fastest growing economy as we were then,
Yes.
short time, and we still pride ourselves on being the fastest growing economy. And so it
Mm,
comes back to again what Sunil's question was. He said we need to have, it wasn't a war on poverty. I don't know what it was. It was a gap. Uh,
Global action on poverty.
global action on poverty or against poverty. So what's the solution? If you want global action, which prevents poverty from happening in the first place, it's not after the
mm,
poverty has happened, we give charity. And that's a
right.
problem, a burden at that time in raising resources for it. How do you prevent it from happening initially? So I joined the Planning Commission, and I had never worked in government and all, like I mentioned before. And my grandson, who lives in America, and he's now 20, um, in university. But that first time he came, he was 3. Next time he came, he was 5. And so he'd come here for 1 month and fool around with me, and we'd go around hiding behind trees and pretending there were magicians up there, and that's how suddenly birds noises were coming. Good times, and he could make up more stories once you encouraged him. And
Right.
I didn't seem to need any encouragement. I'd make up the stories. So we were good friends ourselves. So he came when he was 3. First, like I said, at that time he was just too innocent to think about these things. When he came at 5, we were driving him in a car to New Delhi through this fancy Luton's area in Delhi. Lovely streets with big trees and bungalows that you can't see behind the trees. But at the traffic crossings, even in New Delhi, you will see
Yeah.
poor
Poor
people
people.
camped on the side, sleeping on the side of the road and stuff. So he asked his mother in the car, he said, why are these people sleeping on the road? Why are they doing
Yeah.
sussing on the road? I mean, he uses, I mean, the English
Yeah.
word, pissing on the road. Mom, what's wrong? I mean, no
Mm,
dignity, these chaps. Why is this so? So she said to him, Anaga said to him, son, you're very lucky. We live in a rich country where you have a bedroom to yourself, a bathroom to yourself, and so do we, and a kitchen in which we cook and so on. And these poor people have nothing. But that sort of struck him as observation. 2 years later, he was 7, we're in, and this time I was in the planning commission, just been there a month or two, and I had a nice fancy white ambassador car with a red thing. Those days you were allowed to have and required to have a red thing to clear the traffic for you, and a flag which was not unfurled that morning. And driving in, and we passed again the Nizamuddin area where outside the shrine there, you have a lot of, especially on Fridays, a lot of poor people camped out there waiting for some offerings and so
yeah.
on. And so, and that same area, we drove past this, so now 2 years later, and this young chap exploded. He said, what's the government doing? Counting daisies? So my son asked him the question, and I did, what do you mean counting daisies? He said, look outside. There's so many poor people. Can't people see them? Can't people see them? So I said, no, I do see them. We see them. There are lots of poor people. So then my son said to him, no, he repeated, but what's the government doing about it? So my son
Mm.
said, uh, shh, Dadaji is now the government. So he looks at me because I was this guy fooling around with him. This is called government, this chap. So he came home and he was very then upset, okay, what is this guy doing about it? So when he came home, I put him into my study here where I am now. And I said, Viren, let me show you what we're doing about it. So I pulled out the previous plan. that time it was the 11th plan. And I said, look, we've really studied it. And there were tables and tables with numbers and stuff. And, he learned that there's something called arithmetic and numbers. And so he looked at it, and that relates to what he said, why are you counting daisies? So he was bouncing a ball as he was listening to me opening this book. And then he stopped bouncing the ball one moment and just looked into me, straight into my eyes. He said, Dadaji, don't write books. Do something. So I said, anyway, he wanted to see, where I work, because now I had an office, and you like to show, and they like to see where's your office and stuff. So I took him to the office. Huge place, so huge room, couches, and Sunil's been there, and stuff, and 7 staff outside. I mean, 3 secretaries and 2 peons and 1.5 drivers, and just because they say you are not to spend any time, no wasting any time, just concentrate on the thinking and the problems of this country. Don't carry your own stuff to another room because you'll waste your energy. Let a peon carry your one folder in his hand and give it to you when you arrive at the meeting. It was just a hilarious pantomime, I thought. But there was Viren, and I brought him there. And he saw a bit of this pantomime because they indulged him, brought him whatever he wanted, a Coke, Pepsi, biscuits, and took him around and, gave him something more somewhere in some other office and so on. And then he wrote a book. He himself, he went back to America, summer holidays over. All the children there in that class were asked to write a few words or an essay about what they had done that summer in their summer holidays. Mr. Arun Maira, having told me not to write a book, wrote a 17-page book. Of course, meaning it was a book with lines and his words there. And on top of every page, there was a picture that he drew. And then he went on and describing his thoughts. And in that book, he started by calling it the Planning Commission of India. The book was about the Planning Commission of India. He wrote a title page in his handwriting, big letters, and then by Arun Maira and a date below that. And the first page was still called the Planning Commission and described big offices and structures. And then he went on, and towards the end, page 14, 15, he said the planning, describing now the purpose of the Planning Commission. He wasn't using the word purpose. He said the planning community, and he slipped the tongue. The planning community is a place where all the poor people of India can come, and there will be someone to listen to them. And then they will not be poor anymore. And the picture he drew up there was of a big table and a man, again, a stick man, but a big head and a big belly. Sitting behind the table is Dadaji, I guess. On the other side, a very thin stick man with hands folded. The planning community is a place where all the poor people of India can come, and there'll be someone there to listen to them. And then they will not be poor anymore. And that's when I began to resonate with me that if you listen to somebody, they are given respect, they get dignity. That's one. The second is you will be able to learn wisdom because poorer people are much wiser. They live more frugally and they survive and they seem very happy also. And we are still searching for sources of our happiness. Maybe you haven't earned enough yet. Maybe you're not doing the right things yet. You're not living gracefully. You're living with anxiety and sense of incompleteness. So listening to another person is a great way to learn, especially people not like yourself. I'm making that point. People that you think are very different, either because they're very different because look, they're not as smart as me, they didn't earn enough as me, and therefore they couldn't be as smart as me. So what's the point of listening to them? Let me look and listen to Elon Musk about how to make more money. Or I'm using and a business. I found the role models that all young entrepreneurs are taught, and Sunil will confirm this, were not Gandhiji. They're about Steve Jobs maybe and Jack Welch and nowadays Elon Musk. I mean, these are the people you've got to learn something from. And the role models in India also that were coming up were from the RIT industry, people who made a lot of money in this way of organizing a business. The point of it is to produce more value for anyone who's an investor. You can make a driver an investor, but the way he gets value is through the earnings of his shares. And so this model of what is life about, what is all your work about, is to produce some money for you. money for it. It's not about the purpose of the work in terms of creating a better world for someone else. So Viren's little message then has become my thesis, that please listen to people not like yourself. Please, if you are a Hindu and you think that Muslims are bad, why do you think they're bad? If you just understand it from their perspective, you might realize that some of them are worthier human beings than you are. You may think that, for whatever reason you think I deserve what I have, either because it's my religion or because I went to college in Oxford or I've got more money than them. I'm a better person than they are. No, we're all very worthy human beings. And I say that those who have the least and are prevented from getting more and yet can live with great dignity are worthier human beings than I am. I must learn from them.
And you've written a book about listening into people who are not like you, and I definitely concur. I was just reminded of an interesting connection, which is that both you and my father were born in Lahore, and my dad's name is also
Yeah.
Arun, and it's a very special connection for me. And one of my favorite poets, Faiz Ahmed Faiz, comes from Lahore, and he said, "Bol ke lab azad hain tere, bol zaban ab tak teri hai," which basically means that our voice is definitely the most potent tool that we have. So while we age and we feel that we are being marginalized in one way or the other because the world is in a certain place, gracefully living would be to give voice to our real experience and to make people listen to us. Just feels like that seems to be the message.
To make people listen to us. I want to change that because I realize
Okay.
working with civil society organizations by the hundreds now, probably thousands of them, through
Okay.
Bhavana and their own platforms and around the world. This activism is where
Hmm.
shout loudly to be heard. Where
Okay.
I'm saying we've got to change the conditions. People who don't have enough shouldn't be required to shout loudly to be heard,
Yes.
to get out
Yes.
on the street and shout loudly. We must allow their soft voices, and as you get older, your voice is soft, to be heard.
Yes.
We must be silent and give them the space to speak and be heard. This is what must change.
And that's the right segue for us to, like it's impossible for me to contain a conversation with you in the limited time. I love our time together. And I'm sure it has been interesting for others. Those of you who are here and would like to ask a question, I'm going to encourage you to, drop it in the chat box. Arun, as we try and bring this together and conclude today, if you were to paint a picture of your desired world, a world where we had the opportunity to live long and age with meaning and grace, what would that world look like?
Every person having dignity,
Hmm.
no matter how poor or rich they are, how poor they are, no matter how disabled physically they may be, no matter how old they are, no matter what color of skin they have or what religion they were born into, having a sense of I'm respected for who I am.
Hmm.
And I'm given the space to be able to, by being asked gently, not in terms of criticism, asked gently, why do you think about this issue the way you do? Because maybe I think differently. I'm not going to, and this is what Asha said, it's not then giving an answer to a question you asked. Let the other person answer your question. We get to the habit, we pose a question and then say, look, I'm very smart, I already know the answer to the question. And you say, well, I wonder why you think differently. Let me say, I think you think differently because you haven't learned the right things, because you were born as a Muslim and you think whatever you think. And if you had been born a Hindu, you You poor unlucky chap, you should have been born a Hindu, then you'd have thought, oh, all right. I'm using that because it's such a current situation in our country.
Yeah.
The same about poor and rich. The poor didn't have a chance to have a good education. So I know why you're not so smart. And, I had all this. So you are devaluing another human being by thinking that you are a superior person just because you had accidents in your life that you happen to be born male, or happen to be born in a rich family, etc. No, I mean, come on, that's not you. That's what life gave you, and they haven't had that situation in their life. So this one change I want very, very much, and this comes to a world in which people listen with great respect and curiosity to why other people think differently than I do, because then I learn another way, a new paradigm, which I need to be. That's the vision of the world. It has to be a new paradigm of economy, a new paradigm of a good society. It has to be a new paradigm. And certainly now, nature cannot be exploited for resources for economic purposes. And older communities, which have remained more natural, have always sort of respected nature because nature gave to them. They didn't have the tools, the science, the instruments to overpower nature. They had to respectfully let nature give them and help nature to give them. And so respect the trees and respect their plants and respect their goats and their cattle. We gave to each other as a system. And this wisdom is only in those communities which have not been spoiled in their thinking by modern education. So this is one change I want in the world, very, very clearly. Specifically, I'm saying again, older people are people who have in many communities, especially the poorer communities of poorer countries, retained that wisdom. So actually, if the world wants to discover how to be a better world, please don't go to Harvard and ask the professors there or Oxford and so on. Come to older women in Uttarakhand still living with goats and trees which are being destroyed by dams and building of roads.
Yeah.
And their struggles. When you talked about the Chipko movement, I mean, there's women who said, this is our life. You can't. And you say, what's a tree to this person's life? But there's a connection they saw. They knew
Yes.
it. The tree wasn't there. Yeah. Then the leaves wouldn't fall on the ground. If the leaves didn't fall on the ground, the soil wouldn't renew itself. And if maybe the plants weren't there, therefore, then no crop would come next time, etc. and etc. We have small parts of a beautiful system. And I'm saying this is a feminine attitude. And I just keep now saying to people, please, and Bhavna, you and I have talked about it. We want what I'm calling a feminine way of thinking, not a masculine way of thinking. And I'm characterizing the masculine way of thinking of being in control, of ensuring that the organization will be efficient and deliver on what you define as its purpose, produce more money so that there's more resource for the economy or produce more money for your shareholders. You define the purpose and you design an organization. This is a very controlling way of looking at things. I'm describing that as a masculine way. And a feminine way is, well, I'm not respected, I'm weaker, but I'm going to be nurturing things around me. Why? Not because they pay me for it, but because I care. It matters. So please, we have to shift the thinking to get how can we get more feminine thinking, not more women into CEO positions, which are again learning how to be like a man and more effective than a man. That's not what we want. We want less effective men and more effective feminine thinking to bring the world into a good place. So how can I, Bhavna, with you, please reach out to people and say, please change your thinking, learn from poor women who have continued to bring up their children and look after their old persons and their families and look after the animals around them. They work much, much longer hours than any man does. And here we've got a whole thing. The Indian economy is not growing enough, the GDP, because there aren't enough women in the workforce. I said, stupid. What is work? The women work much more than the men. What do you define as work? And what's the purpose of the work? If the purpose of the work is to increase GDP, yes, a factory is a very good way to organize it because you can measure the output of the factory in terms of economic terms. How do you measure the productivity of a family?
Yeah. And that's a whole other conversation, a full other session about understanding economics. Captain Asha has a question, which is the passion and ikigai of each person to survive with dignity and space, to sustain with self-employment and get respect from society. Is that even possible for us as Indians? What do you have to say?
We have to make it happen because she's defining, are you asking me? Uh, I look young still. I realize this. You see, I look young still, maybe because I feel very young. I feel younger today than I used to feel when I wanted to retire from BCG at 65, from the Planning Commission after 70. I feel really younger. I really
Yes.
feel younger. So it is that what you're saying, finding my role in life, my purpose in life. At this old age, I shouldn't be saying, unless I can go out and earn money, I'm not a useful person. I'm going to be who I am. And the world,
Right.
if it respects me, it's fine. If it doesn't, that's also all right. It's also all right. But of course, I want the world, to the question, the vision that you said, I want the world to be respecting other older people. I'm getting my respect easily because I've done
Right.
things before. And people will
Right.
introduce me like you did. So that's why you should listen to me because he was BCG. He was director of Tata and the rest of it. That's not why you should listen to me. You should listen to the older person who didn't have all these things because those
Yes.
are the things that were brought up in a bad way. We destroy the
Yes.
world by doing things that way. Please listen to someone who has no titles and he has a very different experience to ourselves. I am enjoying learning from such people and
Yeah.
I'm going to keep doing it. I have no respect, frankly, when people say, oh, conscious capitalism, and Sunil knows this. I talk and I say, I respect, I know the persons very well, the people who write the books and stuff, but I ask them this question. You are helping chief executives to be better human beings, and they do feel the need to be better human beings. They understand what a better human being is, like the Ikigai uh, Dr. Captain Asha is talking, except there's a difference. The Ikigai that Captain Asha is talking is someone who's doing something, is feeling that they're producing something. It may be just a craft, it may be
Mm.
just a pot of clay, it may be a piece of art, yeah, or
It
maybe
is
something you're
basically
caring for another.
engaging.
Yes,
It is
engage
basically
with,
engaging yourself with the nature and the
yes.
surrounding. I
And
think
the
that's the
people around
essence of
you, and the people
survivability factor.
around you. I insist it's the people around you. Because there
Yes.
are people who isolate into nature. And I've been a trustee of the Worldwide Foundation for many years. I had to retire because they have a compulsory retirement age for trustees, thank goodness. So I didn't need to keep attending their meetings and passing minutes and all that. But again, the whole thing is isolate nature from society, big reservations. We are trying to do in India, something for
No,
the
that is
cheetahs
not
now
the
and
way
the
of living.
tigers. No. And our forest people say you're depriving us of
Yes.
our livelihoods
It's an
by saying,
ecosystem where human being is just an element of the nature.
yes. And the whole solution to climate change seems to be that plant more trees in India, create space for planting more trees by getting people out of grazing their goats and stuff. Clear more land to put all these towers for the solar and the wind, and so on. Again, clear the people below and then teaching the people, there's something called climate change. They said, we know it. Look what's been happening to our grasses and our trees for decades. But this is not the solution because getting us off and taking away the grass and whatever shrubs grow in the dry areas of Rajasthan is the natural vegetation. Trying to put trees there because yes, a tree will produce more oxygen than a bush would, but a tree needs then more fertilizer, more care to support itself in that environment. Just let human beings with their wisdom live along with nature. They know how to take care of it. So please do not and prevent people from doing what they have learned to do very naturally. They lead fulfilling lives, but we are taking them off from leading a fulfilling life. One, by saying, you're poor tribals who never got educated, we'll take you somewhere, put you up in somewhere, put you into schools to learn our ways of doing things. Please, please, don't teach them our ways. Allow them to flourish in their ways and learn. And of course, we'll have to change. There are many more people in the world, so we cannot have the same solutions as we have. But the nature of the solution is, again, a natural solution. The nature of the solution has to be the same. A community living as a community with nature as its community also.
There's so much there to unpack, and there's so much there to learn. And I'm just mindful of the time, and I'm very, very grateful to everyone who took time out to join this evening.
One more question from someone else, because Asha and I have spoken, and I'm so thankful to you, Asha, for
Not at all, sir.
giving
It is
because you
pleasure to
made
be.
me speak my
I'm
mind of
requesting Bhavna to take up a second session, Bhavna.
that she can do.
All
But
right.
if there's someone else who wants to just share a thought, even may not even be a question, I'd be very happy.
Vishakha and Renu, Dona, anyone?
So I'm personally struggling with the notion of balancing my physicality
Right.
with my purpose and my intention to do something, which means so that's where my struggle is at the moment, and that's why I was really here to listen, to get a sense, because if I look at Arun, he's you're the epitome of living and aging graciously and gracefully and purposefully at the same time. I'm having my big concern has become my physical constraint suddenly, which is not there before in my life. So I'm trying to now reconcile that along with this, and I'm still. It's a question. It's a lovely question, and it's a lovely, and I love the answer, thoughts that I got from it. In any case, just being here with you is a joy for me. So it's fantastic to always
I'd
listen to
like
you.
to then say, Sunil, because you said something which Bhavna and I were talking about before all of you came on. Reconciling my physicality, the change in my physicality with my purpose in life.
Yes.
And there's a thing here, we start focusing on our purpose in life at this age when our physicality has changed. So this is the time to say that I have to do different things and not keep measuring myself about the things that I was able to do and worrying about my inability to do those things or do them as effectively, efficiently as I used to. So you have to, the ikigai comes back. You have to think again. You have to accept the change in your physicality. All these new solutions that, new drugs and you can live for 100, 150 years. Your body will live for 150 years, but you won't. And I'm going to just end with talk to my grandchildren, my grandson, my mother, and she taught me this. My mother passed away at 98, 97 and a half or something. And she was a widow for the last 25 years of her life or longer. And she lived here in India. And I was in the US with my wife for those 10 years. And father passed away and she was alone here. I've got two other brothers, both in the United States at that time. And one of them still is. And so there was no one here to take care of them and to her after that. But she insisted and she came and she knew she had visited us from time to time. She said, no, I want to live where I am. And yes, it's going to be hard physically. But at the point she made was this: I feel in charge of myself. When I come here, you're all so kind and you say, this and that. And I feel I'm a burden on you. Please, I want to live by myself. Now, we were getting concerned, physicality, that she had begun to fall and injure herself and slipping in the bathroom, which can be very bad as you get older. Broken bones don't heal. So by this time, I was back in India and I asked friends in Helpage India, I wasn't with Helpage at all, but there must be some nice older person's homes in India like they are in the US. And maybe the time has come for her to, be cared for in a nice, dignified place. So they showed me a very lovely one in GK1 itself, not far from her house. So we said, you keep the house. And she loved the garden and there were birds coming into her trees and all that. And, you can come every day and there's a woman there and the gardener who comes, every day in the evening to water. So enjoy your garden, have your tea and stuff. But, it'd be nice that you sleep safely. There's someone there just nearby, and it's okay. She went in there and she said no. And then when she said to all three sons, through me, she to tell your younger brothers, I want to live life my way. Yeah, I am in charge of my house. Yes, I am in charge of what I eat and drink, and I'm not going to be told. And if I can't organize it, then I have to learn how to do it. And Bhavna and friends, she, until she was 95, refused to have a full-time help in the house. Because for her, that would mean that, yes, that
Yeah.
she is not able to look after herself. And we were getting
Gosh.
so concerned because she had more falls and we needed. So finally, it's only when she took the decision herself. She found a woman and with a family, and she said, "You come and live, because there was space, nice quarters there. You live with your family." And then those children, the small children who were younger than her grandchildren, she began to teach them because they were poor and they wouldn't go to school or whatever. She said, "You come here." Yes. And so this woman, and the maid who looked after her, lovely woman, older woman, whose husband was in prison several times because he was earning money some bad ways. So she was trying to bring up, her children. One daughter got married, produced a little child also. So here was my mother, who had, I'd say, great grandchildren, not her own, but around there. And they respected her greatly, not because she was older, but because she understood them. She understood the kids, and they felt like they could play with her, talk to her. She couldn't do things physically the same way, Sunil, but her mind was young. And that's the point I wanted to make, and the point she made to me. If your mind stays young, you will physically stay well also. And Bhavna will share this with you. We are learning in the whole geriatric profession that the mind is so connected with the body. And therefore, when you talk of mental health problems, yes, they are causing people to feel and become physically unwell. So the whole US medical system is taking a pivot and saying, gosh, we've got so much depression, so much drugs, so much, suicide within our communities,
Yeah.
and we can't afford, more professional medical health, more mental assistance and therapists and so on. What's the solution? So Vivek Murthy, the Surgeon General, has written this lovely book called Together, the solution for the American medical system. What is it? Please, in community, look
Communities.
after each other.
Going back to community.
Be
It is
together.
sometimes okay not to be okay. In a
Yeah.
chaos filled with community and people where you are trying to share, it's a pull and push system. I think if the mind is put in a monotony for a longer period, it is not living. It is becoming more of a machine. You
So I
need to
wrote
do
an
some
ode. I
thinking
wrote
daily.
a poem, Asha, because you are resonating. I realized that there was a secret here. My mother
Mhm.
remained curious.
Mm.
After I said she was 96, 97, she would notice new things happening in her little garden. She
Yeah.
would notice that there was a birds that she had never seen before. And
Mm.
so she called me, and my adopted youngest brother, Ravi, is the CEO of WWF and has been for many years. So she said, call Ravi Beta and tell him that I've seen this bird here, and this bird is not supposed to be here because he had books on Salim Ali and things, yes. And
Mhm.
bird's natural habitat is somewhere else. So he would say, she's getting old, her eyes are not very good, and so on. But he's second time again, she would describe to me and call him and say, no, you have. So he posted someone there. He said, do you mind if someone, stays there for a few hours? And so he will, take a picture and stuff. And the man said, yes, lo and behold, those birds which are not supposed to be in the middle of Delhi are there, right? Then they started their research. How come these birds came there? How did the migratory paths change? And so this was a curiosity, yes. And then she wanted to know the answer. She wasn't just satisfied with saying, pointing it out. She wanted to know how come the bird is there. Because she also knew, according to Salim Ali, the bird is not
Cycles of
supposed to be
development.
there. So she told me this lesson, and she told my other people, she says, I want to add more life to my years. You sons don't understand. I don't need to add more years to my life. I lived beyond 90. That's old and enough for a body. Old enough. And this is all grace after that, the last remaining years. And to live, not just as a body, but as a full human being, I want to keep learning. And curiosity, she said, is the essence of it. Remain as curious as a child. Ask why.
Yes, tell me why. Tell me why. Like little children say that all the time.
Don't tell me why, ask why.
Ask why. Ask
And
why.
ask yourself and go with others who can help you understand first why you're asking this question.
So it is
Yes.
not asking, it is finding your whys.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
More
another
of a
way.
finding your whys,
Yes,
basically.
yes,
So
exactly.
to your question, Sunil, if you don't mind, I think what I hear Arun help us with is say, probably it's time to reframe your purpose. Probably it's time to recalibrate vis-a-vis what is it that you want to do at this phase, at this stage, with whatever your resources and constraints are. If there's any way that we can support you, I would be more than happy to. And please do let me know if I can in any way walk through with you as you create a new purpose for yourself.
Thank you.
Vishakha, would you like to ask something?
I'll take your leave and thank you so much. God bless.
Bye, Sunil.
Bye, Baba.
There's nothing that to ask, but I'm just grateful that I could be here today and witness this very amazing and interesting conversation. So I think I'm just like Captain Asha mentioned, I'm around the same age, and those questions have started coming in. That what is this aging all about? And that's what really intrigued me and brought me here. And coming from a joint family, I think I've lived most of my life. Again, I've been very interested in the work that you do, Bhavna, the Caregiver Saathi. I've read about it. And I think there's so much of caregiving within the family that, not to speak of myself, but has happened, that I feel that probably, that learning also involves living for yourself and doing the things that you have always been wanting to do. So that's something that I'm looking forward to, is just how can I contribute better by just being who I am and not what others have always expected me to be and to do. So that's the stage where I am. So I kind of I
I
love
feel, Vishakha ji, that's very powerful. When you say ki you are surviving and sustaining your originality in a confusion around you, I think you are keeping yourself alive. That is the
yes.
essence of living, I think.
Well
I think
said.
if you can sustain that,
Yeah.
you are a winner. Already you are a winner. You don't need more resources and more support.
Mhm.
It is your own thought from within. Every day, if you can imbibe this, okay, I'm doing it for my survivability in the confusion around me, I think will keep you going for a much, much longer period. I think that is what is sometimes start missing. Like in
Asha,
my
I realized
situation,
something, though I realized something, which, you and I are quite self-confident. I can hear that in you. And yes, I feel more self-confident. Maybe I am. And so is Bhavna here. And she had to really stand up and be the son in a family which was going through very tough times. We are very self-confident, but many people around us don't feel that way. And
Ah,
either because they're poor or they're
true,
older. So
true.
our whole purpose in Caregiver Saathi
Yeah.
is Bhavna's purpose is to enable people,
Mm-hmm.
Saathis, hmm, I'm saying to caregivers, this is double whammy here. There are caregivers who struggle also with knowing how to give care with respect. And you are a Saathi to these people who are struggling with their own, I've got this responsibility and I don't know how to fulfill it. So there are times in my life I've come and I still have where I do struggle that I want to stay true to something. And I'm not even clear sometimes what it is. And therefore, to this question about being who I am evolving. And I have to keep asking myself, what am I becoming? And
Mm.
not assume that I know who I am and I'm going to now make the world, suit me and do what
Yeah.
I do, starting with the presumption that I'm just going to be me. No, I will change. And that's where the difficult, interesting part comes, that I'm also evolving while
Yeah.
I'm helping the world to evolve. And that's why Mahatma Gandhi said, that's maybe last line, my search for my experiments with truth. It was a journal he kept. Every night he wrote something. It was about his inner struggles, about who he is, his purpose in life.
Yeah.
Plus, he wrote terrific things about economy and ideas about, caste system and solutions for it, and also the economy and poverty and cooperative enterprises, vagera. It was a combination of,
Yes.
continuously trying to discover who he is and develop himself to be a better person, and at the same time engaging with the world. And that is the point. You better engage with the world and try something. And if it
Yeah.
fails and doesn't produce what you think is the right, good, noble thing to do, then ask yourself, maybe I have the wrong idea. Let me experiment again. So, My Experiments with Truth is the title of his book. What is the
True.
truth?
Very true.
So
Bhavana,
well
it will be
said.
good.
And it's
Bhavana, it will be good to connect with you and understand what your areas of works are. Maybe in some
sure.
way, if I can contribute, it will be good.
Most certainly. I have, look it up on caregiversaathi.co.in. Saathi is spelled with a double A. So Caregiver Saathi
Yeah.
dot co dot
Caregiver Saathi. Okay.
yes .co.in.
Saathi mein you said double A, correct?
Yes. Yes.
.in. Okay. We'll do that.
Yes. And leave me a message.
Sure.
Renu, I guess you are busy, but Renu is a dear friend and has been very involved with Caregiver Saathi and has been a caregiver herself for a very, very long time. So I guess she's not able to speak, otherwise it's very unlike her. But Renu is an inspiration. She has been a caregiver to her son for more than 40 years, who had special needs, and is now caring for her dad. She's an incredible woman. But I have really enjoyed the fact that this session, which was intended to be a conversation between two of us, actually became a little community.
True.
And I think that has been really the essence of this conversation, that can we listen in to as many voices as possible, and can we build communities in the way that we can, wherever we are. So thank you for your time, Arun. We are so grateful. And thank you, Asha, for joining in, Vishakha,
Absolutely.
Renu, and many others.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhavna, and thank you all.
Thank you so
Engaging
much.
in a conversation with people who care, makes you younger. So already in this 1.5 hours, I've gained a year of life. So thank you.
True. Very true.
On
Okay.
that
Thank you so
note,
much.
yes, on that note, thank you very much. Cheers to all of you. Have a very lovely evening and the rest of the week.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Wishing you a very happy Diwali in advance.
Yes, to all
Enjoy.
of
You
you.
too.
Wish
To
you all
everyone.
the same. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. How are you feeling?
I am feeling like I said, Bhavna. I'm feeling even fresher. Yes, I was feeling, honestly, last 2 days, because the pollution here is very high, and I wasn't
Right.
able to go out and exercise, and maybe the pollution in any case is coming into my lungs. I mean, levels of 400 is unheard of, at
Oh,
least situation. And so I was feeling lethargic the last 2 days. And then fortunately, I had this conversation. So it's all cleared up. Thank you.
thank you very much. My regards to Shama as well. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Same. And you can put out the recording. I think it's going to be lovely if it came out clearly. You really
Yes.
stimulated a wonderful conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
You too.